So two more examples. These are the ones that are a little bit harder algebraically, so let's go through and kind of put these together. All right, so the first thing is, on this one, let's go ahead and write down what we're doing. We're doing f of x plus h minus f of x all over h, okay, like that. And then we want to get that put together. Okay, and then this is going to have a fraction in it, so there's some background things you got to pay attention to. All right, so here's what you want, what I always show students to do basically is this. When you do the difference quotient, it's a good idea to just get everything set up. So I just draw kind of like that, bracket minus bracket over h, okay? And what happens on this is whatever I give you goes there. So 1 over x plus 2 goes there, and what goes here is the same thing, except x gets replaced with x plus h, okay? So that's what you want to be sure that you're real solid on, is how that goes. Whatever I give you always goes there. Okay, and then change the x to an x plus h, okay? So we got 1 over x plus h plus 2 like that, so that's the setup, all right? Okay, now, from your background, what you got to do, this is called a complex fraction, and what you want to do is you want to make these two denominators that I got highlighted in yellow go away. So the idea is if you had 1 over x plus 2, if you want the x plus 2 to go away, you just multiply it by that, okay? If you have 1 over x plus h plus 2, then you got to multiply by 1 over x plus h plus 2 to get rid of it, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom of this fraction by both of these things to get rid of it, okay? So what I would recommend you do here is just kind of put maybe a brace around that. Show that you're multiplying the top by x plus 2 times x plus h plus 2, and then show that you're doing the same thing on the bottom. Okay, whatever you do to the top of a fraction, you got to do the same thing to the bottom, or otherwise you're changing the problem. Okay, everybody with me okay so far? Okay, now what I'm going to do is this, just do this in your head, and I'll kind of just show you on this. You're doing a distributive property. So if you multiply this by this, what's going to happen? The x plus h plus 2's are going to cross out, right? Okay. Then if you block that off and multiply that by that, what's going to happen? The x plus 2's are going to cross out. Okay. And you can just reason that out in your head so you don't have to write that step where you're doing the distributive property. So if I take this times this, the x plus h plus 2's would cross out, so you'd be left with 1 times x plus 2. Okay, when you multiply this, the x plus 2's cross out, so you're left with minus, and then parenthesis, x plus h plus 2 like that. And then in the bottom, just write down what we have. All right, you guys understand what I'm doing? Let me know if you don't, okay? Because this is sometimes students have some background issues with complex fractions. Okay, I've gotten rid of the two denominators I highlighted in yellow by doing that, okay? So now what I want to do is distribute, collect like terms in the numerator, and then we'll see what we get here. So that's going to be x plus 2, okay? Distribute the minus through, so that's minus x, minus h minus 2, all over h over x plus 2, times x plus h plus 2. All right, what happens in the numerator? What do you see? Stuff cancels out, right? Okay, you have the x's cross out, you have the 2's cross out. So we're left with this. Okay, so it looks like I'm left with negative h over h times x plus 2 times x plus h plus 2. Then what happens? H crosses out, right? Okay, so you can now cross that h out, and then you'd be left with your answer. Okay, so you would have negative 1, h over h would leave you negative 1, over x plus 2 times x plus h plus 2. So if you're going to take calculus, most of you are going to take calculus, you'll be working with derivatives with a difference quotient kind of towards the beginning of the semester. So you want to be able to handle how to do a problem at that level in this class and get pretty confident with that. All right, does anybody have any questions? This is the one that sometimes students have a little trouble with just because of the background issue. But the key thing is getting rid of the fractions. Okay? All right? Any problem? Ask me if you do. Okay. All right, let's set this next one up here. And again, what we're going to do on this is I like to set it up like this. Just have, excuse me, 2 brackets and then all over H. Okay? Tell me what goes in the second bracket always. It's always the same. Say something. Whatever I give you, f of x. Thank you. Okay? Now, tell me what goes in the first parenthesis. There's a slight difference. What's that difference?
F of x plus h.
There you go. Good. Okay, so the x changes into x plus h. So over here, instead of square root, you'll have square root of x plus h. Okay? F of x, x plus h. All right? So that's how you get that going. Now from here, we've got to see how many of you know how to do this from your background. Now what we have to do is we have to get rid of these radicals. Does anybody know what I could multiply by to make all those radicals go away? Just out of my curiosity. What's that? Tell me. A plus sign, what we call the conjugate. Okay, all right. So what you do in this case is you multiply the top by square root of x plus h plus square root of x. We call that the conjugate, and you have to do the same thing to the top and bottom to get rid of that. Okay, that's a little background thing that you learn in algebra. So if you have a square root minus a square root, multiply by the same thing but have a plus, and then that'll get rid of the radical. Okay, the reason that works is because if you had something like this, if you had a plus b times a minus b, and if you FOILed that, you would have a squared minus ab plus ab and then minus b squared. The reason it works is the middle terms cross out when you multiply by a conjugate, and if you square a radical, what happens if you square a radical? It goes away, right? Okay. So what we're going to have is we're going to multiply. We just FOIL the top like this. All right. So you just do the first term. Okay. And that will get rid of the radical. I mean, you don't have to write this step, but I'm going to write what's going on. You're going to do that times that. That's going to make the radical go away. If you do the outside term, and you don't have to write this necessarily, because if you know the shortcut, then you're okay. So that would just be square root of x plus h times square root of x, okay? Then if you do the inside term, you're doing these two here, it would just be the same thing. It would be minus square root of x plus h times radical x. And then when you do the last term, you have positive times negative is negative, square root of x squared. Now you don't have to write the middle terms out on this, because if you know how the a plus b, a minus b works, you know that's going to cancel anyway. So see, these two things here cancel out. Okay, everybody follow that okay? Okay, it's FOIL. And these are sometimes things students haven't done in a while, so you got to review some of this. Well, the bottom, remember we multiplied the top and bottom by square root of x plus h plus square root of x. So we do that. And by doing this, we get rid of the radicals, and then we'll have something that's pretty easy to simplify. Okay, what happens to this piece that I just highlighted? Radical goes away, right? Same thing here, radical goes away, all right? So what you'd end up with is x plus h minus x, okay, and all over h times square root of x plus h plus square root of x, all right? And what happens on these difference quotients almost always is you end up getting rid of this h in the denominator, that leftover h, okay? So then what you'd end up having is you have h over h times square root of x plus h plus square root of x. H is cross out, and then you're done. That's as far as you can go. So you'd end up having 1 over square root of x plus h plus square root of x, okay, like that, all right? So I think I'll put one of each of these on your My Math Lab homework, and you want to be sure you can do that. To me, if you can handle these last two examples, then you probably have the algebra skill that you need to do most of what we do in this class. I mean, just for FOILing and factoring and and working with radicals and so forth like that. So if you get that down, that'll be very helpful to you. Okay? Any questions with anybody? Okay. Let's see. Thumbs up, thumbs down, something. Okay, tell me. Okay, all right. All right, thank you. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and load up the next part of this. I posted